Imagine you're underwater. The water is warm, and there's enough light to see maybe 10 meters in front of you. The surface is somewhere above you, glittering faintly. And for a moment, just a moment, it looks almost peaceful. Then a shadow passes below you. Not fast, not rushing toward you, just moving the way large things move when nothing in their environment has ever threatened them. And as it passes, you start to understand the scale. The head alone is longer than a car. The body stretches back into the dark until you can't see where it ends. This isn't the ocean's apex predator. This is something a bigger creature eats. You are in the ancient ocean. And you have made a very serious mistake. Because here, the deeper you went, the worse it got. Not slightly worse. Categorically, systematically, structurally worse. As if the ocean itself was running an experiment, and the deeper you descended, the more extreme the results became. That pattern held across hundreds of millions of years, across every era of prehistoric ocean life. This is why. The Cretaceous Ocean, roughly 80 million years ago, covered more of the Earth than any ocean alive today. Sea levels were higher, the water was warmer, and what lived in it was, by any modern standard, enormous. Near the surface, you had Mosasaurus, a marine reptile, not a fish, not a dinosaur, somewhere closer in design to a massive ocean-going Komodo dragon, up to 17 meters long, 4 paddle-like limbs, a second row of teeth on the roof of its mouth could grip struggling prey and walk it backward down the throat, the same mechanism snakes use to swallow prey whole. It was fast, it was aggressive, and it was everywhere in the shallow Cretaceous Sea. Moving alongside it was Elasmosaurus, different family entirely, different design logic. A long-necked plesiosaur, its neck accounting for more than half its total body length. Where Mosasaurus was a pursuit predator, Elasmosaurus was a precision one. It used its extraordinary neck to maneuver its small head silently among schools of fish, close enough to strike before they could scatter. These creatures are impressive, genuinely dangerous. But here's what matters. In the context of the ancient ocean, they were the surface layer. They lived where the light was, where the food was dense, where conditions were relatively stable. The deeper you went, the rules changed. The ocean didn't get darker and quieter as you descended. It got older. And the older the ecosystem, the less familiar the logic became. The surface was the easy part. Everything below it was something else. To understand what was living deeper, you have to go further back in time, because depth in the ancient ocean and age are connected. The deep water ecosystems were older, more isolated, and had been running their own evolutionary logic for far longer than the sunlit shallows above them. Go back to the Ordovician period, 470 million years ago. There are no jawed fish yet, no sharks. The vertebrates that existed were small, jawless and slow, filter feeders drifting near the seafloor, not predators. What you have instead is something like this: Endocorus, a cephalopod related distantly to the modern squid, but enclosed in a straight conical shell that could reach 6 meters in length. It looks, frankly, like something you'd find in a satirical drawing of what sea monsters are. A giant cone with tentacles at the end, drifting through an Ordovician sea that had no fast predators, no armored fish, nothing that moved quickly enough to threaten it. Its size alone made it the apex of its world. That's the first piece of the pattern. In the absence of competition, something will always grow large enough to fill the available space. The Ordovician Ocean had no ceiling on size, so Endocorus pushed toward one. Fast forward to the Silurian period and the pattern accelerates. Endocorus is fading. Something new is taking the apex role, and this time, it isn't a cephalopod. Jacalopterus was a sea scorpion. Nearly 2 meters long, with clawed appendages, compound eyes, and a body plan that looked like someone had taken a scorpion and removed every reason for it to be small. It lived in shallow coastal waters and estuaries, and in its era, nothing could stop it except another one. Here is the pattern, stated plainly. Across completely different geological periods, completely different animal groups kept reaching the same conclusion. Get bigger. The arms race didn't have a winner. It had perpetual escalation, with each era producing a larger apex than the last. And every time the dominant design was displaced, something else took its place and started the cycle again. The ocean was running the same experiment over and over, and each iteration came out more extreme than the previous one. But that was near the surface. The same logic, applied in deeper water, produced something else entirely. The Devonian period. 360 million years ago, the ocean has changed dramatically. There are fish now, and not the gentle kind. Every significant creature in the Devonian Sea was armored, thick bone plates, reinforced skulls, interlocking shields covering the vulnerable parts. The ocean had become an ongoing weapons test, and everything in it was either a weapon or protected against one. At the top of that hierarchy was Dunkleosteus. Dunkleosteus was a placoderm, an armored fish, and it represents one of the most purely engineered predators in the fossil record. The head and thorax were covered in thick interlocking bone plates, but it had no teeth. Instead, the edges of its jaw formed self-sharpening bone blades, two curved plates that ground against each other with every bite and stayed razor-edged without any maintenance. The mechanical advantage of its jaw was extraordinary, capable of generating forces that could shear through the armor of any other creature in its ocean. Estimates vary, but large individuals may have reached 5 or 6 meters. It patrolled the reef edges and open coastal waters of the Devonian Sea, where prey was dense and survival was brutal. And here's the detail that tells you most about the Devonian Ocean. Dunkleosteus fossils frequently show bite marks from other Dunkleosteus. The arms race had escalated to the point where the apex predator's only meaningful competition was itself. There was nothing left to eat that could fight back, so they ate each other. Deeper still, in Jurassic seas, you find Liopleurodon, a pliosaur, four-flippered, short-necked, built for power rather than speed. 6 to 7 meters long, with a skull that accounted for roughly a quarter of its total body length. Some researchers believe sensory pits in its snout may have allowed it to detect the pressure wake of prey moving through the water, reading the ocean itself for signs of movement before it ever needed to look. It could orient and close the gap before most prey had any reason to run. What connects Dunkleosteus and Liopleurodon, separated by over 100 million years, is the same principle that connected Endoceras and Jackalopterus. The environment at this depth selected for a very specific combination: large body, specialized sensory system, extreme offensive capability, and the ability to sustain itself through long intervals without food. Deep water was cold, dark, and scarce. The creatures that survived it weren't just big. They were built for a specific kind of patience and a specific kind of violence. If you're enjoying the dive so far, subscribe. Because the deeper we go, the stranger this ocean gets. And in the Devonian and Jurassic Ocean, that design had only been running for a few 100 million years. Below that, the ocean was older, much older. 540 million years ago, something happened that paleontologists call the Cambrian explosion. In a geologically brief window of time, almost every major animal body plan that has ever existed appeared in the fossil record simultaneously. Not gradually, almost at once, the Cambrian Ocean looked nothing like anything that came after it. There were no vertebrates, no fish, no insects, no plants on land. The entire biosphere existed here, in this water, and it was running on rules that life would eventually abandon, but hadn't yet. The apex of the Cambrian Ocean was Anomalocaris, a radiodont, a body plan with no direct modern equivalent. Up to a meter long, with a pair of grasping frontal appendages, a circular jaw ringed with serrated plates, and eyes that were among the most sophisticated optical systems of any creature in this period. Compound eyes with thousands of lenses, comparable to a modern dragonfly's, mounted on stalks, capable of processing a degree of visual detail that most of its prey couldn't approach. It was fast, active, and perceptive in an ocean where most life was slow and soft-bodied. But what makes Anomalocaris genuinely unsettling isn't any single feature. It's the architecture. The entire body plan, the radiodont lineage, has no living descendants. It existed, it dominated, and then it vanished. You cannot look at a modern animal and find its echo. That family of life is simply gone, And what it experienced, how it moved, what it was like to encounter, there is no living reference for any of it. And Anomalocaris wasn't alone. The Cambrian Sea was dense with experiments. Opabinia had 5 eyes and a frontal claw mounted on a flexible proboscis. Hallucigenia walked on stubby paired legs, its back armored with rigid spines, a design so alien that paleontologists spent decades unable to agree on which end was the head. Atoya was a predatory worm that ambushed prey from burrows in the seafloor. None of these body plans survived the Cambrian. All of them were functional apex designs for their moment. Here is where the arms race thesis reaches its conclusion. The reason the ancient ocean produced progressively more extreme creatures as you went deeper wasn't randomness, it was time. The deep ocean was older. It had been running the arms race for longer. Every additional 100 million years of uninterrupted evolutionary pressure produced another iteration, another escalation toward extreme sensory systems, extreme size, extreme specialization for an environment that offered almost nothing but pressure, cold, and scarcity. The creatures near the surface were impressive. The creatures in the middle layers were dangerous. The creatures at the deepest, oldest layers were something the surface ocean had never produced, because the surface ocean hadn't been running long enough to get there. By 540 million years ago, the Cambrian Ocean had produced Anomalocaris. Below the Cambrian, the ocean was even older. The Precambrian Ocean stretches back more than 3 billion years before the Cambrian explosion. For most of that time, life was microbial, single-celled, invisible, ancient in a way that resists comprehension. The first multicellular animals appear only around 600 million years ago in a period called the Ediacaran, and what they looked like was this: flat frond-like organisms, almost featureless, anchored to the seafloor. No eyes, no mouths we can identify, no obvious predators or prey, just form. We have almost no fossil record from the Precambrian deep ocean. Soft-bodied life doesn't preserve well, and the deep-water sediments from that era have been largely subducted, crushed, recycled by plate tectonics. Whatever lived in the deepest Precambrian sea, whatever complexity existed in that deep ancient water, if any existed at all, we have no way to see it. The record simply ends. The logic of everything in this video says it was there. The pattern held across every other era, every other depth, every other ocean. The arms race rewarded size, specialization, and extreme adaptation. The deeper you went, the longer the ocean had been running, the more extreme the outcome. By the rules we've established, the Precambrian deep ocean should have produced something beyond the Cambrian, beyond Anomalocaris, beyond anything in the fossil record. We just can't see it. That ocean is gone. The sediment closed over it. The plates moved. The evidence sank into the mantle. Whatever was down there, and by the logic of everything in this video, something was, vanished without leaving a trace. The ancient ocean is gone. The Cretaceous Sea, the Devonian Ocean, the Cambrian explosion, all of it exists now only in stone, in fragments, in fossils that record the surfaces of creatures we'll never fully understand. But the rule those oceans ran on didn't disappear with them. The modern deep sea, the 80% of it we haven't explored, is still cold, still dark, still under the same evolutionary pressure that produced everything in this video. The arms race didn't end when the ancient oceans closed. It moved. The same logic that built Anomalocaris, that built Dunkleosteus, that built something in the Precambrian deep we'll never see, that logic is still running. We just haven't looked deeply enough to find where it went. The ancient ocean taught us one thing with absolute consistency. Whatever existed below the visible ocean was worse than anything near the surface. More extreme, more alien, more deliberate in its design. We know that was true for 500 million years. We have no reason to believe it stopped.